so I've had some interest in the patterns that I'm making for the masks. This video is specific to this duckbill version of a procedure mask made out of sterile wrap for surgical instruments. It is a 2-ply material. You want to make sure that you have both plies, and here is my pattern that I made that I will take. We'll take still pictures at the end so you can see all the measurements, but I've already gone ahead and traced them out onto the wrap. You want to make sure that the top half of the wrap right up here is where the top half will go, because in between these two bits is where you're going to stick your wire to go over your nose piece. And I just traced it out with simple chalk. So now that you cut that out on one side, the other side also has the same edge for where you want to cut to have the wire put in for the nose. But there's going to be this little piece at the end that you can't get a full mask out of. But save that, because you're going to cut it up and use it to cover the seams on the top and the bottom of the mask when you're making it, so it just doesn't have that raw edge. And then out of the body of the mask, out of the body of the wrap is what you're going to cut your strips to make your ties for. You want them about 34 inches in length, which is ironically exactly how big this drape is, and about 1.25 inches in width. And you don't need to worry about keeping them as the double ply for safety reasons. So you just cut one strip and you use the blue side and the white side as your strips, which is why it looks like that. So with this extra little strip of a piece, and you don't have to be super exact, but I'm just gonna cut a strip like that. And you gotta kind of cut this end piece off where it's been molded together. And now you've got a piece to put over your raw edges here at the top and the bottom. All right, so now that you've cut out your patterns, you got everything that you need to get started. Now is when you start sewing. You can use just a regular sewing machine if you want, or you could also use a serger. The serger for me is easier and goes a lot faster, so I'm going to use a combination of both machines. So first off, what you want to do is kind of figure out the length of what you want. You can use twist ties, you can use floral wire, or you can use pipe cleaners. I have a bunch of pipe cleaners, so I'm just going to use that. So you get it kind of in between this little area right here. You want to shove it down in there and then sew that seam together. Make sure it's kind of towards the middle of the mask. And you want to make sure that you keep pushing the wire in, because if you hit it with your needle, you're going to break needles on your machine, and nobody likes that. So now your wire is tucked nice and neat, and that seam is totally closed off. Okay, so next you want to get your fold here and match this piece here and this piece here. All right, so now we want to sew closed these little darts here. You know, normally if you're working with fabric, you would pin that, but I want to keep the integrity of the mask and not poke any holes in it. So I'm gonna not pin it. And try and make sure that when you're sewing, you follow the arch of the pattern. Okay, and then we'll do the other side. All right, so now you have your duckbill kind of area, and then I'm gonna come down here and just put a seam on this bottom half, getting the two sides to stay together. So now your mask should look like this. So now is when you take those little strips that you had cut off the excess that was at the end that you couldn't make any more pattern out of, and you're just gonna separate the two strips. And I've moved back over to my regular sewing machine and kind of, you can do a straight stitch if you want, but I chose a little bit more of a kind of a decorative stitch because these are plain. Might as well throw some fancy in there. So you're just gonna kind of cover it over that top seam like that. And again, in a normal world you would pin these, but again, I don't want to hurt the integrity of the mask. And this top one is a little difficult because you do have your wire in there. So another good reason to do some either sort of a zigzag stitch or a decorative stitch so that it bounces over the wire. Wrong one. And then you do the same thing on the bottom just to hide that seam. All right, so by now your mask should look like this. And you fold that down, and that's about how it would look like. You got these edges covered, those edges covered. These are just gonna be a raw edge seam, and that's fine because it's held up with the integrity on the inside. And now you're ready to put on your straps. You cut from the long edge of the thing. You separate those two out. And I'm gonna stay with my regular sewing machine, except I'm gonna go to a straight stitch here. And you're gonna want to fold this in half so you have an equal tie on the top to bottom. Again, all of this is not an exact science, it's just to get it on there. And you want to kind of put the point that you folded about midpoint of the mask. And now you're just going to straight stitch down this long side here. And you'll want to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, and now we want to get these folded over and this seam covered. So you're going to take your strap thing that you made and you're going to pull it over and cover right through here. Now I have been pinning at this step at right here as long as it stays on the outside of the mask. My little nod to the Tiger King over here with my pin cushion. Now this part, it doesn't matter that you have the raw edge. We're not looking for a fancy finish, looking for just, can we use this to tie around our heads? So I just fold this piece just like that and stick it underneath my machine. I don't know if you can see, I have my needle moved all the way over to the left side to try and get it as close to that edge as possible. Since it's a small strip of fabric, it's hard to get it to catch on those feed dogs. Now always be sure you pull your pins before you sew on them or you might break your needle. And then you'll just do the same thing on the other side. And then you just want to make sure that you clean everything up at the end, snip any loose little strands of thread there. And there you go, duckbill procedure mask. Great thing about these and using this material is if you have the ability at your hospital to have a UV light, they can be decontaminated by UV light, or they can also be autoclaved to be sterilized again for to extend their use in case that you are in a situation where you're having to reuse masks. The material has been said to work about as well as an N95 mask, but they're not used in that manner because they don't have the ability to form all the way around to form the whole seal like a true N95, but they can work to help keep you safe anyway at the hospital. All right, thanks for watching.